It's your one-stop shop for great wrestling. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Ray Russell brings a host of great shows right to your device. There's the Wrestling Memory Grenade, Regional Wrestling, the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop, the Amazing Puro Academy Show, Retro Wrestling Review with Gene Jackson, Dave Dynasty's long-running hit, Wrestling Nostalgia, Monday Warfare, Raw vs. Nitro, the hilarious Other Ship podcast, and a whole lot more. Great shows and great guests, but where do you find all this stuff? Really simple. Try logging on to WrestleCopia.com. As I like to say, it's your one-stop shop for great wrestling memories. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. On this edition, Bob welcomes back Steve Gennarelli. They look back at wrestling disappointments. You know, stuff that didn't go as planned very well. You know what hasn't gone very well for me? This job. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. What does the word garnish mean? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. My name is Bob Smith. You might remember me from my years with Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. How are you tonight? Kind of a different show tonight. We're going to slide this in amongst our regular fare in that Joe Puccio is not with us this week because of a scheduling conflict. He will be back next time. So, this time we've got Steve Gennarelli helping out, and we are going to talk about wrestling's biggest disappointments. Now, this doesn't mean failures or we're not mocking anyone. It's just certain wrestlers, certain things, certain cards that were just plain disappointing back in the good old days. We'll go over that in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned, listen to this little jingle, and we'll be right back to start the festivities with the one and only elite podcaster, Steve Gennarelli. Don't you go anywhere. Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with the elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. It's been a really nasty, wintry weekend here in the New York City area. We're all getting pelted with snow and sub-freezing temperatures, and it's been a real mess. But as we record this, the state that Steve Gennarelli is in, Florida, got snow this weekend. How you doing, Steve?
Thanks, Bob, for the invite. It's good to be back. Yeah, this morning I got up. It's a Sunday morning. I went to church. It was 71 degrees. I got out of church. It was 53 degrees and rainy, and it almost felt like snow. So by our standards, it's a cold day here.
We don't know when this episode is airing because we are doing a boatload of Outdated Wrestling Hour podcasts without a set date on them. So we may be talking now and this thing doesn't come out till April or something. Sorry about that, but we're talking about current events now, and it was kind of interesting that they actually got snow in Florida. But anyway, our topic is old school wrestling's disappointments. Now, these aren't tragedies, these aren't real big problems. They're just people and events and other things that really didn't work out. Right,
Right.
Steve? That was what we came up with for the topic.
The way I originally interpreted it, and Bob since corrected me, but I consider this like wrestling's biggest busts, like the biggest things that should have been a lot bigger or more successful than they ended up being.
Well, yeah, we could say that too, I guess, but I wanted to be nice because we're
Okay.
an upbeat podcast here, right?
That's right. That's right.
You never hear the word "sucks" on this podcast. It just
Never.
you're like, "That sucked," or "He sucks." That's not what we're here for. We're here because we got gray hairs now, and we used to love wrestling when we were 12 and 13, and we still love it, and this is the reason we have this show. It's an appreciation of looking back at the stuff we really like. Not everything worked out. Did you make a list? Because I have a list of about 10 things that,
Yes, yes, I did make a list. And do you want me to go first or you should go first?
well, since you're on the highly rated podcast from the Arcadian Vanguard Network called Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam, I think you should go first. You get better ratings than I do.
Well, this well, I'm gonna give you the rub in this episode. But anyhow,
Ooh.
uh, this first one is one that I think was on both of our lists, and we've already talked about this amongst ourselves. But so we can share this first one. The Super Bowl of wrestling from 1972 in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, that was the main thing I took a copious notes on. From what I understand, the card was good. In other ways, the card wasn't good.
It was held at the Municipal Stadium. For those that don't know, this is the park where the Indians used to play.
Right.
And in the card, I mean, I'll go through some of the matches just so you know who's on the card. They had a tag team tournament as part of the card. Actually, Tony Marino and Tony Parisi won the NWF straps. There was a ladies tag team match. There was a midget tag team match with Sky Low. And there was a match with the Fargo brothers, which was the legendary Don Fargo, one of the craziest guys in wrestling history, with young Johnny Fargo, better later known as Greg Valentine, against Wahoo McDaniel and Chief White Owl. There was a ladies tag team match. There was a Fabulous Moolah defense against Vicky Williams. There was Bobo Brazil against Killer Tim Brooks for the U.S. title. And then the two big matches was Ernie Ladd against Abdul the Butcher. And the main event was Johnny Powers, the NWF North American champion, against Johnny Valentine. And Johnny Powers defeated Johnny Valentine.
I can't even picture that in my mind's eye. I grew up watching Johnny Powers, but still, I consider like Johnny Valentine one of the greats of the greats, and Johnny Powers was a regional star,
Right, right.
whereas Valentine was a worldwide star. And I just see the result and I go, how?
Well,
But
he was.
it was of its era, yeah. And that was late in Johnny Valentine's career, right? Pretty much because he ended in 75.
That's right. That's right. I think from what I know, Johnny Valentine, I don't think he was afraid to do jobs. He knew that he'd
No.
be over wherever he went. And Johnny Powers was the major star of this promotion, the NWF. He was the promoter as well, along with the Pedro Martinez. And this group, the NWF, who was putting on this show, they had kind of a mixed bag. Definitely their share of success in areas like Buffalo, Cleveland, upstate New York, and I think in Akron, Ohio. They were in different places, and they did have some success.
But that was my first federation.
Yes,
I
it
grew up
was.
that was the one that
It hooked
indoctrinated
you.
me to pro wrestling, and it hooked me. I remember at the time, the wrestling magazines played the card up big. They didn't mention attendance figures and stuff like that. But you could see for the photos, you could see somebody in the ring, and you would see banks of empty seats,
Right.
which is why we're calling this a disappointment. Nobody really knows. I can't find a person who was around then what the actual attendance figure was. I've seen anywhere between 5,000 to 20,000. One source claimed 12,000, but that would have been a good arena figure, not a stadium figure for 12,000. So,
You're
in that
right.
regard, you have to look at it as not poorly attended, but it probably just drew the same regular crowd that would have went to the local arena to see it.
Right, right. And I mean, the one figure that it seems like it could be legitimate from Wrestling Review, they said 14,000. And the
Okay.
thing is, like you just said, 14,000, the arena would have looked huge. But in this stadium that sat like 71,000 for baseball, it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
looked like you had just had like people walking off the street, and there weren't there many people there. But on the positive side, there are a couple of very interesting things that I think happened on this day. One was that not unlike WrestleMania 3, they actually had the wrestlers come to the ring in like these little chariot type devices. Have you seen those pictures, Bob? But they came in these
Mhm.
like little wagons or little chariots to the ring, not unlike the little mini rings that drove the wrestlers to the ring at the Pontiac Silverdome all those years later. And another cool thing, now this interested me. I don't know what the listeners of this show would think about this, but this turned me on, this idea, which is so unique. They had 3 matches going on at the same time, so you'd have 3 rings and 3 matches going on at the same time. To me, I'd like to see WWF try that on one of these shows. I know it takes away from having one match be the main focus, but, I mean, this was again, they were trying to break barriers and try something new, so I thought that was unique.
I read quotes from people who were there, fans who said it
Mhm.
was a mess.
Right.
All right. First of all, and it's just I've never been a fan of the 2 ring deal
Okay.
because it creates a bad vantage point for the fans if they're sitting on the opposite side.
Right,
Can you
that's
imagine
true.
sitting in an end zone seat?
So you're
What
looking
are you
at
looking at? What are you
y
seeing?
you're looking at an empty ring and then another ring beyond it where they're wrestling in it. So
And this is 1972 where there's, like, no such thing as big screens at all, unless they,
true.
unless they pointed a camera at something and put it on the scoreboard, and even that was rare for baseball days in a cavernous stadium like that. So I just don't know, but from what I read, that was kind of a debacle. It didn't work well.
Yeah.
I mean, it shortened the card, but I don't think they even advertised that they were gonna do that. They just had a match listing, so if you show up and you got 3 of the matches going on at the same time, what do you it doesn't even sound appealing to me, to be honest with you. I think it was a bad idea.
I think you're right because the key to wrestling is you have to be engaged and focused. It's not like this circus like Ringling Brothers where it's a 3-ring circus and you have all this hoopla going on around you. I mean, with wrestling, you really gotta be engaged and focused and, if it's an angle, if it's a match with 2 competitors or a tag team match, you really wanna be, like, into it and really invested, not, like, distracted by 2 other matches going on at the same time.
I absolutely agree. You know what? Probably and here's the deal. I bet the match quality was really good. There's some really good names on that show. Abby versus Ladd. I can't even imagine what that was like. That had to be great.
Yeah, Abdullah was still in his prime, and he wasn't, he could move at that point, he could do, big flying elbow, he could move around the ring, and he was very diabolical and vicious with his foreign, his,
But you
deadly
know what
weapons.
though? You know what though? In '72, Abdullah, who I saw, he wasn't using foreign objects.
Really?
Yeah, he was biting, gouging, and just being a wild man, as
Mhm.
opposed to the shtick with the boot and all that stuff.
Right,
That kinda came later. In the beginning, he was just plain vicious,
right.
kinda cheeky.
Right, right.
And I'm not saying he didn't use a foreign object in the match. I didn't see the match, but I do know that he never used a foreign object in that year, and I saw those matches on the NWF TV when he was there. Never used a foreign object once.
Wow.
He was biting people in the throat. I mean, he was just a sadist, crazy man.
Well,
So,
yeah.
despite all that, I wish I was there. I wish I had seen that card.
Yeah, I do too. I hope someday, if anything ever comes out of it, it'll probably be old like movie footage, a Super 8 or reel to reel old footage of the match. But I'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah, that'd be great. A lot of things I'd like to see I can't see, like Blassie Tolos and stuff. Oh gosh, I'd love to see even one of those matches. And there is some of one of their matches on YouTube, but it's silent old 8 millimeter film, like you said.
Right.
It's really not a good vantage point or good quality. So
Oh yeah.
you kind of see it, but you kind of don't.
Well, why don't you hit me with another one?
Or here's one. I bet I'll say this and you go, what? Lisa Sliwa
I know. I
in the
remember her.
in the WWF.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, Curtis Lewa is a founder of
Guardian
the Guardian
Angel.
Angels in New York City, plus he's a radio host, and he just ran for mayor and got 7% of the vote. So, but in any event, he had a lovely young wife named Lisa, and she was an excellent athlete in real life, and she actually trained to become a wrestler in the WWF era, right around Tuesday Night Titans, I guess, right?
Yes, that's right.
From what I can tell, she trained a little bit under Moolah, and she wrestled Velvet McIntyre once.
Okay.
According to everything I could find out, that was it.
Right.
That was the only match she had, and nobody can kind of figure out why it petered out the way it did. Now, some people say she was the Spider Lady in WWE. There was a character named Spider Lady who later was Moolah when Moolah screwed Wendy Richter out
That's
of her
right.
title at Madison Square Garden. From what I'm hearing, that really wasn't the case. I always thought she was the early Spider Lady, and I thought I saw the skinnier Spider Lady on television. Maybe it
Hmm.
was somebody else, but they're saying it really wasn't her. So, and they gave her such a big push on the Tuesday Night Titans show, like, "I'm gonna come in, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that." Then it just fizzled out. She's now known by her real name of Lisa Evers, and she's been a part of Channel 5 in New York City's local TV news programs for years as both a program host and a reporter. I enjoy her work locally. She does a lot of good work for the New York City community. She's a nice lady. She's just a
Right.
very obviously well-rounded person, athletic. She can talk on camera. I'm surprised she didn't make it at all. It just seems like they threw in the towel on it very quickly. Maybe they just discovered quickly she didn't have the aptitude for it.
Right, that could be, but that's a very interesting call on your part that you mentioned her because I do remember she was featured quite a few times, at least 3 or 4 on Tuesday Night Titans. She kinda looks like AOC, who was a popular or unpopular, politician, depending upon where you are. She was very athletic looking. They also focused that she did some modeling at the time too,
Mhm, yeah.
so she really had model good looks and a, pretty face, and it just again, it was one of those cases it wasn't meant to be, I guess.
Well, she was supposedly she was a really good athlete in her young years, like college and stuff like that. That age period. But not every athlete can be a wrestler. Or ask Alex Karras.
Yeah, right. And that era of the WWF, especially the women's division, I mean, it was really pretty much Moolah's thing. I mean, she was running that aspect, I think. It was mostly all the Moolah girls were there, and Wendy Richter kind of broke away from Moolah. And eventually, Vince dumped her, and they just went with Moolah and her group. And maybe Lisa just didn't feel like she fit in with that group. I mean, that's certainly possible.
I can't even guess at this point. It was hard enough finding just the information that I have here. It's. I just remember her being pushed, and I actually think they did a film vignette on one of the syndicated shows too, as I recall. Didn't work out.
Well,
All right.
at that time too, I think they were just really excited to have an attractive woman on the wrestling show because that was so unusual at the time.
Well, they found it in Wendy Richter, and Wendy Richter is way more influential than she gets credit for being, because
Oh, yeah.
she did not look like a Moolah wrestler at all. She
Right.
looked completely different, her moveset was different, and after that, wrestling changed.
Very true.
How about you? You got another classic-y, old-timey, somewhat disappointment.
Another big one similar to our Cleveland Super Bowl wrestling thing. This one is the Ali Inoki fiasco from 1976 because for those that don't know, in 1976, Ali, the boxing champion, faced the martial arts champion Antonio Inoki, who was a champion of his own promotion, New Japan, and Vince McMahon and Bob Arum and other people. They tried to promote this as a big event, a closed circuit event in multiple locations. And across the country, they had different cards. And there was one in the AWA, there was one in Florida, there was one in Los Angeles. And they had these wrestling cards with maybe a boxer versus wrestler also live. Like in New York, they had Andre against Chuck Wepner. And the only market that had succeeded was on the East Coast with Bruno against Stan Hansen because that was the big wrestling draw that brought the wrestling fans out to Shea Stadium. But apparently this was a huge failure in all the other areas. So, but it definitely is interesting to look back on.
Overall, first of all, I heard they did make money on this thing, because of it was an expensive closed circuit deal in some places,
Right.
and I don't think it was that much of a tank job in terms of the finances. I think the repercussions of the Inoki Ali fight itself were wide ranging and very disappointing in that they gobbed up the rules so much that Ali could only punch and Inoki couldn't do a lot of wrestling moves on him. It was in the contract. The match consisted mainly of Inoki on his back, crawling around like a spider, kicking Ali in the lower legs round after round. And here's the problem. Later on, they discovered that Ali had blood clots in his lower legs from being kicked so hard all the time.
Right.
And that created health problems for him that may have affected his life in his later years.
But I will add to that Ali and Inoki, with this event, they started a lifelong friendship, so there was no hard feelings there, apparently.
Apparently not. But, artistically as a wrestling match, it was bad. Artistically as a boxing match, it was bad. The best part of the whole thing was the build-up to it on local television in various organizations
Right,
and the undercards, which were wrestling matches.
right.
The only smart thing they did do was have a live wrestling undercard because it would have
Mhm.
been a complete debacle without it. Totally
Right,
messed up.
right. Well, the fans in the Northeast, especially the ones that went to Shea Stadium, because they did apparently have, I think, a crowd close to 30,000 at Shea Stadium, mainly to see Bruno against Stan Hansen, but they also enjoyed some of the other matches, which included the Executioners against TJ Strongbow and Billy White Wolf. And they had Andre against Chuck Wepner, and then the boxing match on the big screen. But the Bruno match, Stan Hansen talks about it. I mean, there were, men in tuxedos, women wearing fur coats, mink coats. People were collapsing. They thought that Bruno was going to get hurt again. Bruno came out of the dugout. I guess people were weeping and going crazy because they thought after he got his neck broke, they thought he was done. And the fact that he could come back, that part was big and historic. But the thing was a flop with the rest of the country. The Bruno match wasn't simulcast or wasn't televised in those other markets, and they didn't have any big draw in the other markets other than the regular wrestling show. So
That's interesting to me that do well in some markets. Because I remember it being such a big deal around here. Like I say, I'm in New York, and I think there was a closed circuit even up in Albany, New York, but I think it was just that thing and just that match.
right,
So,
right.
but yeah, both artistically, sports-wise, and in any other way, that was a big disappointment. No question about it.
But I will say that time has changed things. At the time, it was considered a major letdown, a major disappointment. But I know in recent years there was a book written about the whole thing, and the book basically said this match was the beginning of the whole mixed martial arts. Having different combat sports competitors go against each other, they were saying it was groundbreaking. So, history rewrites itself, I guess.
But you know what else is bad about it? Build-up was great.
Yeah,
The Gorilla Monsoon thing with Ali,
right,
Ali fighting Buddy Wolf, I think in
right.
Minneapolis. Some other things around the country, the build-up with Fred Blassie on The Tonight Show, you name it.
Yeah, that's right.
You name it, it was a tremendous build.
Again, I think the biggest reason why it failed was the United States ticket buying general public. They didn't know who Antonio Inoki was. Unless you were buying newsstand wrestling magazines, you had no idea who he was, and he was barely even mentioned in those magazines.
Put it this way, it wasn't the match of the century either.
Right, right.
They always called these, "Oh, it's the match of the century." No, it wasn't close. Alright, a 5-year long, I guess. Let's see here, let me just check my notes here. Yeah, around 5 years, it was on ESPN, Global Wrestling Federation, GWF. Most of us called it Global. After Jerry Jarrett pulled out of the Sportatorium in Dallas in 1991, here comes Joe Pedicino and Max Andrews with a new concept, Global, but you got a TV deal on ESPN, which sounds great. At one point, it was on daily on the All Sports Network from Monday through Friday, like after school, like around 4 o'clock. There was talk in the wrestling world of some big financier that was bankrolling the project, and they'd have these major stars from all over the world. But frankly, I don't think that was either BS or something went wrong. And I know what side I'm leaning on, but I'm going to keep it to myself. So anyway, but regardless, they started out pretty well. They had Cactus Jack, the Patriot, a young Marcus Bagwell, a young JBL who was named John Hawk at that point.
Mhm.
Lightning Kid, you know how his career worked out.
Very good.
Scott Hudson, and Bonnie Blackstone, Craig Johnson, and Joe Pedicino did the announcing. They were excellent. And then soon Eddie Gilbert came on board, right, as
Right.
the booker and brought in a lot of his talent, like his brother, Mock and Singh and people like that, Barry Horowitz. But there's a lot of things working against this. Number one, I don't know who came up with this concept. I don't think it was the organization, but they would censor violent matches or even certain moves and spots. Like like you'd be watching at one point I remember watching Eddie Gilbert throw a fireball. You never saw it. When he took the fire out, it switched to a crowd shot of a
Oh my
reaction
god.
from the crowd.
Oh
I
gosh.
just watched one old episode yesterday on the Savoldi network.
Mhm.
Some guy was doing chair shots on somebody else, and they cut to the crowd. You saw him lift the chair, but you didn't see him hit anybody.
Oh, good grief.
And apparently, I looked at another episode. It was the same thing. They would optically censor out match action. Typical wrestling match action. I'm like, oh, that's not great. So Gilbert left in 1992 when the budget for the program, for some reason, the budget got cut. I can't imagine why. I don't know how well they were drawing because it wasn't world class anymore there. But something called North Star Promotion took over, and it became a mess the last couple of years. One time they had the world's first bungee match. You remember that, right? Stephen Dane against Chaz Taylor. And then Maniac Mac Davis attached himself to the bungee cord, and he was launched up and down, and he came back with a moon rock, right? Oh, baby.
Yeah.
This is classic stuff, right? Ugh. And then I think the dumbest thing they had an announcer named David Webb, and he got clocked one day by Manny Fernandez, knocked out, and then when he woke up, he thought he was Elvis and started to talk like Elvis on the play-by-play, and he had an Elvis outfit on, and baby, great balls of fire. It was so bad. It was so bad that Cecil Fielder got involved,
Really?
the baseball player. He was supposedly there to observe wrestlers. I don't know what it meant. He did some color commentary for a while. In fact, they had a football player for a while on Global too. I can't remember who it was. Remember they had a football star that was doing color?
I don't remember that.
Skandar Akbar did color, just. And then late on, they brought Chris Adams back, and he brought a lot of his cool people in, and they brought some really interesting. You remember who the Ebony Experience was?
Yeah, didn't they soon become Booker T and Stevie Ray?
Stevie Ray, yeah.
Mhm.
They had Raven, they had Bill Irwin, the Freebirds came back. A lot of wrestlers under Skandar Akbars, the usual Texas guys, Gary Young, all that stuff. It wasn't really, really awful at the end, but it was all over. And, I think it was around 95, but they just packed it in. It was done. Maybe a little later than that. I had it written down, but I don't remember the year they packed it in. But at that point, nobody was watching. It was like filler programming. And I don't even know if it was a good idea because everybody still associated the Sportatorium, which is the only place it's seemingly promoted, with the Von Erichs World Class.
Mhm.
Now, of course, the fans there got burnt out on the Von Erichs when all their scandals, took place. But the problem is, if it had been a little simpler and not as corny, it might have worked. And that's why it's disappointing.
They kept alluding to or talking about their Nigerian financial guy who supposedly was worth billions of dollars. And I mean, and this was even the talk of the wrestling newsletters at the time. And the wrestling fans were talking about it. And I know a lot of the fans at the time who were disillusioned with the two major federations, they kept dreaming that this was going to be like something big, but it just never materialized. So.
Well, at the beginning, it seemed like it was going to be because one of the first people I saw was Jim Cornette with Stan Lane and stuff like that. And, the first couple of episodes, it really, really looked promising.
Yeah.
But then again, they called it the Global Dome. It was the Sportatorium. You can't – what are you doing?
Yeah.
They would have been better saying it was the Sportatorium because people from out of Texas would go, oh, that legendary arena.
Yeah. Yep.
So to make it a vague name, the Global Dome, when, it was the same ring bell, it was just – I don't even know what to say other than just a lot of bad decisions. And like I said, the late period with the fake Elvis and all that stuff, good gravy, man. What were they even thinking?
I'm glad I never saw that.
I talk about that all the time when the announcer thought he was Elvis. Nobody remembers that. Nobody watched it. That's how bad they lost their audience at that point.
I want to hit you with one here. This is more about guys that maybe came in for one taping and then just vanished or fell off the map. So I'm just going to kind of reel off some names to you. In 1975, in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, or WWF, Dr. Jerry Graham came in with the Grand Wizard and lasted one TV taping. I
don't think that's correct because I saw a picture of him with Albano from that period.
Well, I have a
unless that's when he came back. Did he come back in the 80s? Didn't they try to bring him back around 80 or 81 too?
I'm glad you mentioned that. He came back in 85. He even got introduced at Madison Square Garden, not as a wrestler, but he was going to be a manager. And I just found out that the reason why that didn't last, apparently he took a fall, broke a leg, and that was it. He couldn't travel. He couldn't do anything. So when you're 400 pounds, you break a leg, that's a problem.
Yeah, but you're right. The attempts at bringing him back any time after early 70s was a disaster.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just didn't work.
Now, Mongolian Stomper, this is something that's come up recently. He tried to come in 1975 and apparently lasted one taping. And I talked with Tony Richards about this. He apparently had some fight or flight issues and just decided to abandon the promotion. He was the kind of a guy that, kind of self-sabotage himself and say to himself, like, well, this isn't going to work. Why do they need me? Or what are they going to do with me? He didn't realize the promotion probably would have pushed him to the moon. And that's what they usually did with a new heel that came in. And he left, but he had done the same thing in the late 60s. So I wanted to mention that. We had guys like Billy Jack Haynes. He came in for a cup of coffee like in late 84, and he was pictured famously on one of their programs or magazines on a sled with Hulk Hogan and Wendy Richter and Barry Windham. But he was gone by the time the magazine got printed. I mean, he ended up coming back in 86 for a decent run, but he was just so kind of untrustworthy because he would come and go like the wind. And then I would also just add, there were a lot of wrestlers that came in with this big build-up through vignettes. And one of them was in WCW, Glacier, who they had built up week after week after week. Glacier is coming. And by the time he got there, it was like, okay, well, he's going to wrestle in prelims. And he was good. There was nothing wrong with him, but they acted like he was going to be the biggest thing you've ever seen in wrestling. And he just ended up being another guy in the prelim matches.
Was that Ray Lloyd?
Yes, it was.
Sugar Ray Lloyd at one point.
Sugar Ray Lloyd.
Yeah, not a bad wrestler.
He was fine.
But the character, he got buried underneath the weight of the expectations, I think.
Yeah,
Even if he
right.
was great, he had to be great all the time. And I think that was a case of too much hype for too little result, really. Not the wrestler's fault, but
No.
he'd been better off at Ray Lloyd, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they built it up over like weeks and months, and by the time he arrived, you were expecting like the second coming, and there we go.
But here's the deal. You remember it. What did Glacier even mean?
I don't know.
Didn't he have like a blue thing in his eye to make him look like he was an Iceman or something? I don't quite recall because I don't want to recall.
Well, he had a complicated ring gear that he wore. I mean, it was very like futuristic looking. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's it.
he looked like he just came in off of some huge big budget movie like Waterworld or something. But yeah, it was just hard for him to live up to the hype.
Yeah, it really was. Sometimes you overhype something.
Mhm.
I'll jump to something else too. Talk about overhype. This is even a wrestler. The gobbledygooker at the 1990 Survivor Series. All right.
Yeah.
They pushed the bejesus out of that
What's in
thing.
the egg? What's in the egg?
I'm on a radio show, right, back at 1990. I'm on somebody's radio show, and some caller comes in and goes, "Oh, what do you think's in the egg?" And here's my response. I said, "Well, it's not Jack Briscoe versus Harley Race for the Indie World title, so I don't care." And boy, did it stink. Holy mackerel. Who was that supposed to entertain? I just saw a clip of it just to remind myself of it, and the crowd went nuts, boy.
Right.
Went nuts, boy. Even children went, "This is stupid."
Mean Gene he deserves an Oscar for trying to sell that thing. Him and Hector Guerrero, they're doing the crisscrosses but yeah, it was supposed to be Ric Flair coming out of the egg, from what I heard.
The gobbledy what? The gobbledygooker? You gotta be ribbing me. That's oh, poor. And that was what, Hector Guerrero?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, just painful to even think back on. It really was painful. It's so bad. Proof that you try to
Right.
make your organization kid friendly, you
Right.
can go too far.
Right.
Outback Jack.
I'm Jack. Yes.
Every time I think it, I want steak. I don't know why. But in the expansion WWF, 1986, one of the biggest hit movies, Crocodile Dundee. So somebody in the brain trust said, let's make our own Crocodile Dundee, which is basically what that was.
Right.
He was a wrestler who was actually trained by Les Thornton. He worked for Stu Hart in Calgary.
Mhm.
Here they bring him in and a long, long, long build up. And then when he got in the ring, poof, he got a few angles against Killer Khan and people like Ron Bass and stuff like that, but he really didn't go over all that well. And he, I never say a wrestler's not good, but I don't think there was anything special about his presentation at all. He
No.
wasn't fast. He wasn't powerful. He was just kind of there with an Aussie accent. I don't know
Right.
what to say other than It didn't work.
Yeah, yeah, he seemed like a very nice guy, and he definitely tried his best. I know there was another guy around the same era, I think his name was Jacko, who was in a lot of commercials, and I think he would take his teeth out and stuff like that, and maybe he was the guy they should have gone with maybe because he was had a lot more personality, but nobody looks back on Outback Jack and really just, like, smiles and says that he was my guy.
Hillbilly Jim worked, Outback Jack didn't.
That's right.
And you're gonna have to explain to me what the difference was because one was as broad as the other, you know? Scuffling hillbillies. There's the thing about it, there were plenty of hillbilly wrestlers long before
Oh,
Hillbilly
yeah.
Jim.
Right,
The Scuffling Hillbillies.
right, right.
So, that's nothing new. That was really nothing new. They could have gotten away with that in any era, I think. All right, remember when Ox Baker came to the WWF for an eyelash of time?
Yeah, that was 1980, and, apparently, Vince the elder Vince took a look at him, and you could see he was very couldn't really move around that well, and they brought him in to be a challenger for Backlund, and they just felt he wasn't up to snuff, and he just didn't come back.
I've never figured that out. You mean they told him to go home? Is that what you're hearing about that? Or
That's that's
because
that's that's what I heard about it.
here's the deal. At that point, they were bringing people like Sweet Hansen to fight him. I mean, it's like, and Bulldog Brower. So
Right.
how could Ox Baker have been worse than those two?
I think Ox Baker with a hard punch, would have probably been slightly better than Sweet Anson or, Bulldog
Oh, wait a
Brower from
minute.
1979.
Wait a minute. Knowing the McMahons, if one guy had a fissure, the other guy wasn't. I don't know if Stasiak was around at that point, but he was known for the hard punch too. I bet they didn't let Baker do the hard punch.
Yeah, yeah, maybe out of loyalty to Stasiak, maybe they didn't
Yeah,
wanna bring him back. It's certainly possible.
I found that interesting. I remember seeing his TV appearance in Allentown, with the Grand Wizard was his manager. They threw the Grand Wizard on him,
Right,
and apparently that was it.
right. Yeah, and
So I was disappointed. I actually wanted to see Ox Baker because I had seen him in your least favorite federation, the IWA.
well, I will tell you that there was one other guy who kinda got the short shrift like an Ox Baker, and this happened, I think, in '83. Ed Wiskoski, well known from Portland and later more well known as Colonel De Beers in the AWA, he came in for a brief run, and his WWF persona was gonna be the Polish Prince.
Yeah,
Supposedly, he was gonna feud with Ivan Putski, which I thought would have been box office, but I've been wrong before.
that's right. He kind of evaporated real quick as a Polish princess. I remember that too.
Yeah.
I remember that, and he was good everywhere he traveled. So that's another confusing decision that I don't quite understand. But
Oh,
again,
absolutely.
disappointing, right?
Oh,
You were looking
absolutely.
forward to seeing that, so it was disappointing. Here we go. How about the Freebirds coming and going from
Right,
the WWF? Just
right.
poop, gone. They matched him up with David Wolf, who was part of the Rock and Wrestling Connection with Cyndi Lauper right about
Right,
that point, 1984.
right,
And it all made sense because Michael Hayes had that musical bent to him. He had that
right.
Freebird song and all that stuff. They left after just a few appearances, and rumor has it, Bret Hart, I think, was quoted as saying, "Andre fired them."
Yes, I've heard that, yes.
I don't know if it's true. I'm gonna say allegedly. This is all alleged, but apparently they showed up in the middle of a car blasted or drunk or something, and Andre said, "You're going home. You're fired." And I cannot vouch for it. And I read the quote from Bret Hart, but I don't know if it's true. But that's basically the only story I've ever heard about why they came and went so quick.
Well, I'll add to that that from what I heard, it was Andre who put the good word in for them from him seeing them in other territories since he was the traveling attraction. He put a good word in for them to come in, so they came in, and then they're working the show together. I don't know what town it was, but, like, they're in the back, like, asleep, like, on chairs or whatever, asleep, and he Andre says, "You're fired," and I guess they were gonna try to debate him on that, and he says, "Well, I'm the boss. You're gone. You're fired." And that was it. They were out of there.
Amazing. I never heard that one. I just know that they were here one day and gone the next.
Mhm.
I was not a big fan of the Rock and Wrestling Connection period. I really wasn't. I just wasn't. I think once Wendy Richter won the title, that was it for me, and they tried to kinda string it along. So that was disappointing too, the fact that they kept up on that stuff that I really didn't think was all that over, to be honest with you.
Well,
after the big title match.
I just like the idea of the whole Lou Albano versus Cyndi Lauper feud. That was interesting to kick it all off, and then they got on MTV with their different matches and stuff, and that gave wrestling a new audience. So that part was good. I got one for you, Bob.
All right.
What do you remember this thing called Pro Wrestling USA?
Loved it with a passion.
Really?
Yes, I loved every part of it, from Jack Reynolds and Terry Funk as your original announcers to Gordon Soley coming in to the mess of the AWA screwing things up and everything else. I wanted an alternative, and I got it with Pro Wrestling USA. I enjoyed every TV show. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it at all. I just think when you put those promoters in the same room, they're not gonna get along for longer than 20 minutes. That's all, and that was the problem with it, right?
Right. That was the big problem with it. But I mean, I will give you another viewpoint. I'm surprised that you really liked it so much. Is me as a viewer, I think John McAdam would maybe agree with me on this. It just seemed like they focused a lot on Bob Backlund when he didn't need to be the focus anymore. They should have focused it on the, top NWA guys or top AWA guys. It just seemed like a mishmash and just seemed like a mess. And like you said, you have like different chefs running the kitchen. There's nobody in charge. It just becomes a mess.
But maybe they felt that because they were promoting in the East, Meadowlands and stuff like that, that they needed to have a East Coast superstar really push so that would attract an audience.
Right.
What they didn't realize is that when Backlund came back to the WWF not that much longer, he didn't attract the audience then either.
Right.
So I just think that the Backlund time had come and gone, and the fact that he evaporated for a couple years didn't help.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you. I think they should have featured the feuds. They could have done packages like they do on all the wrestling shows of the feuds going on, and then bring them to the East, bring them to
Yeah.
wherever they're promoting. I think
Yeah.
that would have worked like gangbusters. So I can't say I ever attended a Pro Wrestling USA card, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
At that point, I don't know. I just like the idea of Ric Flair and Nick Bockwinkel, and the mishmash of the two organizations sounded like fun to me. But again, these things never seem to work.
True. True. Go ahead. Hit me with one.
Here's one way out of left field, Jackson.
All right.
Ready for this one?
I'm
I bet
ready.
I'll bet you have no idea about this one. Maybe you do. Broadway in New York City, the play Teaneck Tansy, The Venus Flytrap, the wrestling-based Broadway production.
Andy Kaufman.
Debbie Harry.
There we go.
Now, it was performed in England for about 4 years under a different title beginning in 1980, but in 1983, the play was produced on Broadway under the title Teaneck Tansy, The Venus Flytrap. And Debbie Harry was in it, and Andy Kaufman played the referee, and I don't know much about the play. I don't think it was a musical. It might have been. I'm not even sure. But, it had its success in London, and it closed the same day it opened on Broadway. Although they did do a matinee and evening show on its premiere and finale. That was it.
Wow.
And, as someone who has personally seen a play that opened and closed in the same night, it's usually because nobody showed up.
Right.
And at the other play that I saw, nobody showed up. And they said, oops, they don't want to continue to produce something they think is going to be a flop. They will pull it immediately. And how bad could that have been? Maybe it wasn't bad at all, but nobody got to see it.
Yeah. I think there were times when Andy Kaufman just had kind of a bad it was like he kind of lost his attraction with the general audience. Like they even did a parody of that, on SNL. They said, should we have Andy Kaufman back? Yes or no? And they voted no. We don't want you to come back. And, it's too bad. I know that it was right around that time frame that he got sick and, he passed away the following year. But at least in 83, he made that wrestling masterpiece, My Breakfast with Blassie. What a great film.
I have to agree with you. Is it a great film? No. Is it a great film? Yes. Right? That's what that is. Is it a great film? Is it a great film? Absolutely. It's one of those weird things that really is terrible, but it's great.
I love it.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
You're right. It's not good as a motion picture. It's not. There are parts of it that are just so crude and nasty and ugly, but it was still worth it to see Blassie talking off the cuff. He acted like there wasn't a camera pointed at him when he was talking to Kaufman at the breakfast table.
Right.
Which is the part I enjoyed the most. All the goofy stuff that happened later I could have cared less about. But just the conversation between Blassie and Kaufman about wrestling,
Yes.
that was insider stuff, man.
It was great. It was great.
Yeah, I have a copy of it. Are you kidding me? That's one of my favorites, no question about it. But as far as T. Nick Tansey goes, well, you had to be there, and not many people were.
That's sad but true.
Yeah. Now,
I'm gonna
what
I'm gonna hit you with one, Jackson, okay? I got
oh,
one. This goes back to 1998, and I was there for this. I was there in Binghamton, New York on a Monday Night Raw taping. They did this travesty called the Brawl for All, which has since become legendary or
uh,
infamous. The Brawl for All, and that was a show where wrestlers were supposedly shoot fighting with each other in a combination boxing wrestling thing, and different wrestlers got injured. I know Steve Williams got severely injured, and he was out for quite a few months. And it was just a complete travesty. And as a fan in attendance there that day, you didn't know what you were watching. It was just a travesty, and we were booing, and I was very frustrated. The
I'm
only
surprised.
positive, the only positive I can remember from that is that the legendary Danny Hodge was there with Jim Ross. I think he was one of Jim Ross's childhood heroes, and there's Danny Hodge in my hometown. He was trying to give credence to this event, I guess.
This isn't on my list, but you made me think of the Black Scorpion angle,
Oh yes, yes, yes,
which we've talked about recently on the show. But what a debacle
yeah.
with great people involved, and it was still a debacle.
And why did it have to be Ric Flair? I mean, it could have been anybody else.
It would have been more interesting if it was like even Al Perez would have been more interesting if they
Yeah.
settled on using him.
Even
I
Paul
just don't.
Orndorff would have been a good choice, I think.
Oh yeah, he would have, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Confusing. And I was there for the blow off, St. Louis.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was there. I can't say I didn't enjoy myself, but here's another problem too. Can you name what else was on that card? They had this tag team tournament with supposedly teams from around the globe, and
Sure.
a lot of people were just happened to be from other. They were all these thrown together tag teams, and it was as exciting as it sounds. So, and I can't blame the wrestlers like the Steiners one, and you got to love the Steiners, but
Yeah.
it's one of those cards where we were there, you watched every match, and you can remember maybe one match or two. That was
Right.
basically that kind of a show.
Oh God.
So, what else do I have here? Let's talk about when WCW started gobbling up old WWF stars
Right.
at the period when they were number one in the ratings for 10 minutes, right?
Right.
They didn't go over like they should have. Think of these guys and tell me if they went over as well as they should have. Kurt Hennig, the British Bulldog, Bret Hart, and Rick Martel.
Well, I think the one that really stands out there is Bret Hart, because here he comes. He's on their air like the next night after the Montreal screw job, and he didn't know what the heck to do with him. Unforgivable, one of the biggest travesties in wrestling history, probably.
It really was one of the probably three biggest stars in the industry at that point, and they gave him money that would be fitting of that status. It's like they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Too many cooks in that organization. What a mess.
Yeah, we're gonna make you a special guest referee in a match with Larry Zbyszko. I mean, is that the way to debut?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that one. Man, what a waste. And I'm going to conclude my list with a semi-current thing. Last year, biggest
Sure.
disappointing thing I think I've ever watched. And yeah, it's right up there with all of them. John Cena's heel turn.
Oh yeah.
It started for a dumb reason. It ended for a dumb reason. It made no sense in the middle, and nobody enjoyed it. Other than that, it was great.
It was a complete travesty in every way. The execution of it, the burial of it, and everything in between. But I have something comparable to what you just said, Bob. I mean, this is so bad. He's one of the top wrestlers today, CM Punk. But can you remember CM Punk being retired for about 10 years? He comes to AEW, and they really dropped the ball on him. It was one of the biggest cluster Fs in history. They ended up basically firing him for no good reason. And they were blaming him on some silly stuff that happened in the dressing room. And meanwhile, he goes to WWF, and he immediately becomes a huge money guy for them, helping them draw these huge houses that they're drawing now. And just embarrassing how Tony Khan dropped the ball on him.
I get in enough trouble on social media talking about AEW. Although, here's what I've been doing lately. AEW has been featuring their worst excesses and most unnecessarily violent moments as their scissor reels to advertise their program. So
Right.
I'm reposting them and going, is this right? Is that right? Should they be doing this? Should this guy looks like he could have broke his neck. Should he have done it?
Right.
They just had one of Moxley stabbing somebody in the forehead and the blood is gushing out his head in spurts like the old New Jack thing from
Yeah.
ECW.
Right.
And I'm like, this is what they're using to attract people. People literally getting hurt? Really?
It's
There
disgusting.
is a mindset in that organization that is awful. Tony, I'm sorry, I can't get behind that organization just for doing that. They
Right.
can be stupid all they want. Just for doing that, unforgivable.
Right.
If a wrestler gets permanently hurt by something stupid they did on a spot on a TV show, there's only one person to blame, and it's not the wrestlers.
Right.
Glad you agree. Professional wrestlers are the greatest athletes on the planet. They devote their entire lives to it just to get in the ring, even as preliminary guys. And the fact that one guy goes up and says, "I'm going to do this stunt." Wow, cool, go ahead. No, somebody's got to say no, and they got to say it soon. I'm telling you, you
Well,
can't you can't watch these clips that are going on now and go, oh, it's just a thing, it's just a spot. No, it's more than that. It's the mindset that goes along with it. The fact that wrestlers now are supposed to put their livelihoods on the line for a cheap pop in the middle of a match. No way, Jack. No way.
no, I think the beautiful thing about wrestling is the whole idea of it is you're there to put on a great show for the audience. You're there to protect yourself. You're there to protect your opponent. And when you forget about those key elements, everything you're, you have to keep those elements first and foremost.
Absolutely true. And here's the deal about what pro wrestling should be. You can put on a huge, long, violent match, and you don't have to kill each other doing it.
Right.
That's work. Stabbing a guy with an X-Acto blade in the forehead isn't work.
Hmm.
I rest my case on that. Some of the greatest, most violent matches of the past, the guys were able to drive home that night. We'll put it that way.
Right.
I respect wrestlers far too much. And I heard from Matt Hardy directed something to me on Facebook. I was complaining about the thing that when Regal statement, and Matt Hardy agreed with me. I'm going to read that on a future show and let people know what he said to me personally. And he agreed with everything I said. And he chatted about, how to, he wants to be a conduit from the old school thinking to today and keeping wrestlers safe while putting on great, exciting matches. Perfect. What he said
Right.
was perfect.
Right.
So hats off to Matt Hardy in that regard. We kind of veered off here, although disappointments. But again, these weren't tragedies. These weren't big problems with wrestling. They were just moments that you wish you'd come out a different direction, right, Steve?
Right, right. Yeah, no, it's been really fun to kind of go over these with you, Bob. I mean, some of these things I think the average fan probably forgot about or maybe didn't know about. And it's just kind of fun to revisit these and just think that they were kind of unique mystery items in wrestling.
I still wish I had seen the 72 card in Cleveland. That
Yeah,
one just looked like fun to me. It just looked like a real all-star show and all those big names on it and probably about 11 matches on the show, and it looked fun. And the magazines played it up both before and after it happened. I'm just sorry that it wasn't profitable.
yeah, yeah. It definitely wasn't profitable. And I'm still waiting for the release of the 1976 Shea Stadium show. I mean, the only match that's really seen the light of the day is the Andre Chuck Wepner match, but the Bruno Hansen match, which is about a 10-minute match, still waiting to see that someday, hopefully before I leave this earth. So we're hoping that WWE will release it if they can find it. Who knows? They may not even know where it is.
Well, let's get into one more thing before I let you go. The movement of the old catalog around streaming video now,
Sure.
and the fact that they took most of that stuff off of Peacock,
Right.
but the stuff that hasn't reemerged is the really oldest stuff they had on there. Championship
Right.
Wrestling, All-Star Wrestling, the
Right.
McHugh, Gary Capetta era, other things from that era. And I'm afraid, and we've all been afraid, people are talking about it on the web and here in podcast land, that we're never going to see that stuff again. And I would hate that.
I think it's going to see the light of day. I'm really an optimist in pretty much every aspect of my life. So maybe I'm dumb, but even if it was just on the website, like WWE Vault, if they released it, or if I know there's a channel Tubi, which is like a free streaming service, they already have some old wrestling that's on there, like the Sheik's promotion, old obscure wrestling. I mean, they could definitely add some WWE's content to Tubi. I'm sure they'd love to have it because people do watch the wrestling. So I think it'll see the light of day in one form or another at some point.
I hope so. There are certain old WWF shows on YouTube. I've seen them there.
Right.
Now, points I've seen they were taken down because of copyright infringement, but other than that, I still see some vestiges of them there. I don't know how much is there anymore.
Right. Doing
the podcast, I don't have as much time as I used to look at old stuff, but
Sure.
I'll tell you, that was my jam, man. Those simpler one light over the ring, old ring announcer with a bad fitting suit. That's my jam, man. I did the grit and spit. I call it the grit and spit era.
Right.
The matches had grit to them. It was just simple. Ring the bell. You'd come back from a commercial break. The guys would be in the ring already. They'd be announced and they'd go to work, as opposed to today. If we tune into Monday Night Raw and we tune in right when the show comes on, the first thing you're going to see is somebody walk for 7 minutes into the ring and then talk for another 12.
Right.
It doesn't work very well for me, and nobody my age disagrees with me at this point.
What I grew up on was the squash matches and getting over the heel of the month, through their finishing maneuvers, which were always so deadly. You didn't know if Bruno or Backlund would be able to survive them. So they really, when they went away from that, they went to more competitive matches. You lost the learning of, okay, here's a newcomer and he's got this deadly finisher. And how is the champion going to be able to defeat this guy with his great finisher? That whole mystery thing went away. Now it's like two evenly matched people who we know about, and they wrestle each other. And you really lost the mystery. You lost the kind of work that your brain used to do to wonder. You're not wondering anymore. You're just watching and observing.
My mind wanders. When somebody's got the mic at the beginning, welcome to Monday, and then they talk for 8 minutes, my mind just gone. It doesn't hold my attraction. Just ring the bell.
I think part of what turns me off of today's wrestling is just that everybody looks the same. I mean, they're all look the same. All the divas look the same. All the wrestlers look the same. In our era that we grew up on, you had your Haystacks Calhoun or a George Steele, or I mean, there were so many unusual body types and looks, but now it's like everybody's super athletic. They all look like they could be on the U.S. gymnastics team. It's just, I don't know what to say.
I think the phrase is cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
They have some good-looking new athletes coming in now from, I guess, NXT. But again, it's all shtick. They've got their little shtick, their little sayings. They all look like they're chiseled out of granite for the most part. Okay, cool. I guess that's fine. But you know what? It takes that special moment to make a superstar. Becky Lynch had one. Steve Austin had one.
Right.
Mick Foley had one. You say the right thing. You do the right thing at just the right time. Boom. It doesn't matter what you look like. You're over.
Right.
Or you have that one great match, Steve Austin versus Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing is how you build real stars, as opposed to calling somebody a star and putting a camera on them.
Right. Right.
Oh, we're getting negative here. This show isn't supposed to be negative. It's supposed to be upbeat, like you on your hit podcast, Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam, which is on every week on the Arcadian Vanguard Network. And you just had a great run of shows. Congratulations on all your success there and elsewhere in the podcast world.
No, thank you, Bob. And thank you for thinking about me on the show. I mean, this is a great topic. I mean, we barely scratched the surface as far as these forgotten memories of wrestling. It's just hard to even put a name onto it. Things that we forgot about in wrestling, or the biggest busts in wrestling, however you want to describe it.
Biggest bust in wrestling when Stu Sachs said, "Go ahead, write to Peter Bro, I have 500 all by yourself." You know what the bust was? It busted my ass. That's what it was. You know what? No, something. Bill Apter keeps hyping me lately over this.
Yeah.
He actually came to my defense. He said Bob did the whole thing. And
Yeah.
I'm thanking him for that. He said it in a bunch of media lately that Bob Smith did the 91 and 92. He was the one person who did it. No one else did it. And he remembers it better than other people did from the office at that point, because he saw me. He saw how grouchy and unkempt I was on day 3. It was a bear to put together, Jack.
Well, I know you're working on your own book, and that'll be out maybe this year. but I'd like you or someone else, and I maybe would prefer that you do it just because of your lineage with the PWI 500. I'd like to see a historical PWI 500, like all the top workers of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that of our era, I guess.
How
And
about a
that, I mean,
general? Yeah, that's a great idea. A general 500,
yeah,
not this era or any other era. All of it. Go
yeah,
back to
yeah.
Hackett Smith.
I
Like
always go
go
back to
back
the
to Harry.
Bill James historical baseball abstract.
Yeah, yeah,
I want
yeah.
that for pro wrestling, is what I'm saying.
That is a great idea.
Thank you.
You should be our magazine editor. You know that? You really should. We could have used you. No, back in the day, we could have used you. We used to put our office chairs in a circle. They had wheels on them, and we go in the middle of the office, and we'd come up with story ideas. You would
Right.
have been great at that, man. You would
Yeah.
have been awesome at that.
Yeah.
No, he just agrees. He's just shaking his head. Yep, sure, I would have. Sure. The humble Steve Gennarelli. All
I
right.
should get
No, actually, nobody's more humble than you are, to be honest with you. So,
no.
again, I thank you for your presence here. It's always a pleasure, always a blast. And I hope the listeners feel the same way. And we'll all be looking out for your podcast work. And thank you again.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me back. I look forward to our next episode together.
There's our show, Disappointing Wrestling. But somebody who never disappoints is Steve Gennarelli. Have a good day, my friend.
You too, Bob.
That's it for another edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. Write to us, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Our website, outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com, where you can find all of our episodes at the press of a button. We will never Patreon you for those. Also on the website, you will find a box that says Outdated Wrestling Hour Fan Club, where for a nominal fee, you can help perpetuate the ongoing adventures of this podcast and our sister show, the Outdated Entertainment Hour, which comes out about once a month. All of it on outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. We're available on every podcast app you can think of. Please join us again. The Outdated Wrestling Hour is part of the WrestleCopia podcast network. That's it for now. We hope you had a really good time tonight. And we're out every Friday with new editions of the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. So until next time, this is Bob Smith. You might remember me from my days with PWI. Thanks for being loyal fans. Thanks for listening every week. And we always say the same thing at the end of every show. In the words of Ringo Starr, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.